This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gents. Welcome back to High Top Sports Oregon. We got a jam-packed one here. This is the last week until it's week prep for Idaho, boys, so buckle in. We got a few things to talk about here today with Derek, the Duck Insider. We're going to talk about Dillion Gabriel. I've got some question marks. As the outsider, some people may not like my thoughts, but I think it's good to have an unbiased opinion about the situation, to bring in my thoughts and concerns. Also, he makes a move in the Heisman favorite candidacy, which is interesting that we're having this conversation about him. And then we've got our scrimmage notes from Saturday. We're going to go over some offensive line concerns and some injury updates. So be sure to hang out, smash the like button, and subscribe. But Derek the Duck, how are we feeling after a weekend of commits and our last fall camp practice? Now we're heading into the real deal.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited about it. Obviously, we got week 0 coming up this week. A couple games to look forward to this weekend. So, always get excited about that. But, fall camp wrap it up here. And now we're officially in, I guess, what I would consider regular season camp. So a lot to be excited about. Obviously, as you mentioned, we got Idaho next week, which isn't necessarily, a premier game on the slate. But I'm excited to have some Duck football back. So, yeah, excited to get into the jam-packed show today. I think we're going to get some people riled up.
No, it's good. Look, we talked about it because I like to be able to push back and kind of give a different perspective on it and even ask, like, hey, as a non-fan, I know as a Florida fan, I get super into it. You kind of just think, like, there's no way we can lose. You're all in. Now, you always have the fan base that are kind of pessimistic about it as well, too. But I wanted to push back, get your thoughts on this. Like, hey, am I seeing this the same way? Are you feeling kind of that, too? Or am I just being negative? And maybe some fans are thinking about it as well. It's interesting is I had this thought about Dillion Gabriel and my concerns of Dylan. And I think how I started it with you was like, look, I think for the Ducks, what Bo Nix brought to the table last year, it was so good and so smooth that it was almost underappreciated because of how great he was for the Oregon Ducks. And I think the Duck fans, like, we know how great he was. I know we know how great he was. I don't think the rest of the world knew how great he was. The guy threw for 4,000 yards with his eyes closed, right? Just didn't necessarily get the same love and appreciation as other quarterbacks like Carson Beck, Jaden Daniels, in my opinion. Jordan Travis, before he went down, was getting a lot of hype and love over Bo. I know Bo at the end of the year, but I feel like he kind of just got looked past, and I think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL from the draft pick as well. So that's my thought process on that. I think Dillion Gabriel is electric. He's an exciting addition to you guys, but I have my reserves. While I'm looking things up to kind of formulate an opinion, I've come across this article about the offensive coordinator saying, look, no more bombs, right? He says these guys love throwing 50-yard bombs, making the highlight reel, right? Making the big splash, the big play. And I go, look, these are my reserves of Gabriel, because at Oklahoma, guys just slinging the rock. Let him go do him, roll out, throw it on the football field. And this is where Bo Nix, the presence that he brought to the organization, to the team, a very NFL presence, NFL-minded quarterback. And even in the article, it talks about where, moreover, Stein uses former Duck and now Denver Broncos quarterback Bo Nix to teach his players his preferred style of play, emphasizing the value of choosing simple throws and not forcing the touchdown bombs to win football games. Now, with all that said, mouthful, I'll let you go here in just a minute, Derek the Duck. I did some more digging because, again, I watched a lot of Dillion Gabriel at Oklahoma because I wanted Oklahoma to fail miserably. So I was watching with a different lens. Respect Dylan, wanted him to fail miserably. Now, tables have turned. Love me some Ducks. So we're all good. No need to yell at me. But I want to see, like, what are some issues that we, as a Duck fan, what you should be looking out for, right? His lowest QBR were against Kansas and Oklahoma State with 64. All right. Both those teams ran a 4.25 against him, meaning more cornerbacks in the play, much harder to read, a lot of zone reads on that, which turnovers because you're trying to read what's going on. Is he going to step up? Is he going to step back? Texas plays a 4.25 as well. They played a lot of man against him, and he had a 91.9 QBR. So, Sean, how does that work out? How did he overcome that? Well, he rushed for 113 yards against Texas. So when a play wasn't there, he was able to use his feet, which makes him, again, a very electric college football player, being able to run. Ohio State runs a 4.25, and they're extremely talented in that secondary as well, too. One of the top defenses going into 2024. So, look, plenty of time before the Ohio State game. I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I wanted to bring this to you of, like, look, am I crazy for having these reserves on Dillion Gabriel, or do you think, like, hey, I think there's enough time for them to figure this thing out, or were you kind of on that same boat as well leading into this season?
Yeah, so, kind of when we were talking about it before, I said that I view Dillion Gabriel in a very similar lens that I viewed Bo Nix coming in originally from Auburn. In that, I mean, we know he has all the talent in the world, all the physical tools that you want in a quarterback. And, it just may not have translated quite the way you want it to, or there's some areas where they needed to grow in. And obviously, Dillion Gabriel is one in particular where those deep reads is something he struggled with a little bit last year, particularly when they put pressure on him. But I think one thing that makes me feel a little more at ease is the simplicity of a Will Stein offense. And when I say that, I don't quite mean that, there's not a lot of motions, there's not offensive line stunts, they're not doing double move. No. When I say simplicity, I mean they run a very frequent one read and go type of offense. You see a lot of quick throws, you see a lot of bubble screens, a lot of shallow crossers. Oregon's offense isn't necessarily built on trying to accomplish those bombs. And I have a feeling that's kind of more so what he's getting at than saying, we don't want Dillion Gabriel throwing bombs. I think he's more saying that in the offense that he runs and the schematics of it, it benefits you more to get the play out and almost ensure that you're not turning the ball over. So, when you listen to Will Stein talk, one thing that he mentions very, very frequently is we do not want penalties and we do not want to turn the ball over. And that's it. If we do not do those two things, he firmly believes that you have an opportunity to win every game you put yourself in. And I think we kind of see that philosophy directly translate to the field, even with an NFL ready quarterback like Bo Nix. Bo is capable of making those deep reads and, looking off corners and safeties and doing all this and that. But we still didn't really see that take place. And I feel like that's kind of what really escalated his draft stock. I know a lot of people, they're like, oh, check down Bo Nix, or Oregon's offense, they don't push the ball. Well, you don't really need to. And I think that's the whole philosophy of Will Stein's offense is you don't have to go deep because what you're doing is you're getting these guys balls in space anyway. You're letting the Tezes, the Evan Stewarts, your running backs, get the ball and go into space. And I think what he's saying is you give yourself a better chance to hold on to the ball and continue your drive as opposed to dropping back deep and throwing a 60-40, 50-50 ball and seeing what happens. So I have a feeling that's more what he's saying about Dillion Gabriel, but also to your credit, I don't, take this with a grain of salt, Ducks fans. I don't necessarily trust Dillion Gabriel fully yet. And once again, this is not a thing of where I question his ability or, I don't think he's the right fit for the Ducks offense or this and that. It's 100%. I mean, in theory, on paper, when he transferred, it makes so much sense. The way he uses his legs, he's not necessarily what I would consider a true mobile quarterback. He uses his legs when he has to. That Texas game is a perfect example. You could see him trying to make these reads. When he felt flustered, he used his legs to escape, not necessarily to get the big play, but to manage a positive.
But he has it when he needs it.
100%. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see in this offense again. Very similar to the Bo Nix offense that he ran with Kenny Dillingham, where Bo did run a little bit more than use his legs. And I kind of have a feeling that's what we're going to see out of Dillion, just because, he doesn't have that second year in an Oregon offense to learn and get comfortable and get the timing down with all these guys. So, in all, I would say I do have some concerns just until it's able to translate on the field and we're able to see if was able to make growth in the offseason. But I do feel like at the same time, we have the right man for the job to, do exactly what we want to do. I think if he takes care of the ball, he's going to have an exceptional year just, based off the offensive line that's in front of him and the receivers on the outside and the depth and the running back. You couldn't ask for a better supporting cast to take some of that pressure off of him.
Ton of playmakers around him to get the ball to. And I think the system that he's in with Dan Lanning and Stein is the perfect system for him to be able to thrive. And I love that the check down Bo, right? We're suffocating the defense when we do that. You're slowly beating them down. Getting into that air raid blow up offense doesn't really benefit anybody. You score in 2.5 seconds. Okay, cool. The other team's just going to go back and score too because they're fresh and that your defense is not tired. So there's ebbs and flows to it. But again, I raised the question just to kind of, I think it's good to have some critical thinking of when we head into these games and what we should be looking for. If you're the Duck fan, what are you going to be looking out for? There's so many talented things. There's so much hype heading into the Ducks. Speaking to, we're going to get into that as well when we break down the scrimmage and the interview of Dan. You don't get much out of him. And following Florida football and other fan bases, these guys get obliterated from the beat writers. And I have a thought because of that, and we'll get into it. But look, I'm just a guy talking ball with Derek Duck. As I'm formulating my opinion here, this happens the last 24 hours. Dillion surpasses Carson Beck as the favorite now to win the Heisman. And we're going to show you how you guys can bet on that here in just a moment with our sponsors at BetUS. But incredible. I mean, look, Vegas rarely misses. They don't have an entire city, high life, and keep putting up new
Bless you,
buildings.
sir.
Thank you. Buildings year in and year out because they suck at their job. Okay. They're really good at it. And that's why people continue to go back. And that's why I have this spear that's worth $2 billion because Vegas knows what they're doing. So there's a reason why Dillion Gabriel, and I believe look, even though I have my reserves are more when I'm looking at them for the big games, right? When it coming down to the wire, you got to get Ohio State, you got to get the Michigans, you got to win that playoff game. That's my reserved. I don't have any questions that Dillion Gabriel is going to throw for over 4,500 yards, probably 40 touchdowns, a couple of interceptions, and rush for X amount of yards and touchdowns with this Oregon offense. And just this thing is going to be firing all cylinders. Never a question, not a doubt. That's why I say hammer the 10.5 wins. It's when it comes, there's going to be a team that's going to push you. And is that where we're going to see him be able to overcome that? And look, he probably will. I don't know. I just don't feel like we saw it at Oklahoma, and maybe it was the surroundings that were that, and obviously for the move. But what are your thoughts on him being the favorite? Do you like it? Do you love it? Are you indifferent?
Yeah, I would say I'm indifferent about it. I can understand why he's in that conversation. Once again, kind of like I just said before, I think he put himself in one of the best environments in college football, just with the offense that he's running, the supporting cast, Oregon, what they're able to do with their quarterbacks. Obviously, we saw Bo Nix, he got the name check down Bowl last year for throwing these little 6-yard pop passes and such. But here he was in New York at the end of the year in the Heisman conversation. So I can definitely understand why he's in there. In terms of the favorite, I choose to be a little skeptical again, kind of like I just said, until we're able to see him in this Duck uniform and put it all together on the field, just see how this timing meshes, and particularly the big game. So, the first one obviously is going to be Ohio State, that October 12th game. And Ohio State's defense is going to be one of the best in the nation. And, there are going to be times where he struggles in that game. And my question is, is he able to bounce back? And that's one of the things that made Bo so special is, he could go down, struggle for a couple drives, comes back equally as composed every drive, and, eventually snaps out of it. Great players are going to make great plays eventually. And I want to see if Dillion Gabriel is able to do that. If he is, he's going to be in New York at the end of the season. But, I wouldn't say I would put him as my personal favorite at this point. But, once again, that's just me.
Carson Beck's hard to look over. I think Carson Beck got slept on last year personally with one of the top quarterbacks, threw for over 3,500 yards. Again, in the same offense with Kirby Smart. A lot of things going in his direction with a lot of talent surrounding him as well. That's going to be a close one. But look, while we're here talking about it, let's go ahead and give a shout out really quick to our sponsors at BetUS. When you use the link in the description for your first 3 deposits, you get back 125% up to $2,000. And we're going to do right now, we're going to hop in here. We're going to take a little bit of a bet here. Now, although we just said we don't feel comfortable in him being the favorite, I still going to put some money on Dillion Gabriel to win the whole damn thing. What do we think, Derek the Duck? We're feeling pretty good about it. We've got Dillion Gabriel here with the 6 money line. We're going to go ahead and click on that. I'm going to put 25 on old DG to win 125.
That sounds like a fair bet to me. I've blown $25 on far stupider crap in my life. So,
I love it. There it is. 25 on Gabriel to win the Heisman Trophy at the end of the year, although it is now worse odds than what it was probably 24 hours ago. We should have took it when we had the chance. Clearly, there's a lot of favorites here. But look, I think he's going to have a lot of weight in leading up to this game where he's going to be able to take and run with it because he's going to be far ahead of the competition with the schedule that the Ducks play. But again, check out BetUS. Link is in the description. Powered by them all season long. First 3 deposits, 125% back up to $2,000. You saw how easy it was there to find the future odds for the Heisman. There's some other picks in here if you guys are feeling better. Luther Burden, Derek the Duck is confident in his ability to play wide receiver. But yeah, good stuff there from BetUS. Now, let's break down a few things. We've got injury update with the offensive line, a new face at center position, and then Coach Dan keeping it light. And I've got an opinion and a thought on how he's able to do those things. But talk to us about this O-line situation, and should we be concerned?
Yeah, first off, I'm going to preface by saying, as you mentioned before, Dan Lanning is extremely tight-lipped about situations. So when addressing the Matthew Bedford injury, which is something we discussed this weekend on our cast, Dan Lanning ended up coming out and saying after the scrimmage on Saturday that Matthew Bedford is down for a bit, in exact quotes, with a left knee injury. But he does expect him to play at some point this season. So, to me, when I hear that, those are two very conflicting things. You hear a bit and you're like, oh, maybe it's not that serious. But then you hear it followed with will play at some point this season. Not necessarily something I feel comfortable with. it doesn't sound like people in the building are extremely concerned at this point. I would call it a more cautious approach with his injury, just in terms of, how they're going to return him and such like that. But it sounds like he's going to be down for a while. It would be really nice to get him back for the Ohio State game in early October. But at this point, I look for him to be out for at least a couple early games here this year. I think you're muted, Shelton.
Thank you, sir. Now, where does this leave us with the center production on the football field? Again, I think this is more of a concern probably than what I brought up with Dillion Gabriel. Duck fans are concerned about that. It's the trenches, right? Which is we've been hitting heavily on that, especially moving into the Big Ten, a big trenches style of defense and offense there. How does that look for you guys?
Yeah, so the offensive line, obviously, I think is something that we don't really know how the patchwork is going to look at this point. Both Dan Lanning and Will Stein had come out and said they're kind of open to options, including moving some pieces around. Maybe we're looking at just a simple next man up situation with Nishad Strother coming up and starting. But as of this morning, it was reported that Poncho, who was projected to start at center this year, slid over to that guard position to fill in for Bedford. And then the former walk-on Charlie Pickard was taking snaps at center. Just based off the timing of when this was in the media's presence, I have a feeling this is probably what they're going to roll out for the starting lineup against Idaho. That does not necessarily mean that that's how it's going to play out the entire game. I could definitely see it being a situation where they're just constantly rotating new guys in and trying to get some of these younger guys' feet wet. And so, early on, it's not going to be quite so magnified. But this is an injury that, it truly does affect the whole line, because now we're starting to really move some pieces around. Obviously, like I said, Poncho is projected to play there. Now he's moving, going back to a guard situation, and now we got to lean on a former walk-on, and how does that play out? So at this point, there's just a lot of question marks on that offensive line. I know they're overall one of the best in the nation when fully healthy, and there is some depth there with some unproven pieces. But I think you have to be slightly cautious, or at least questioning what the health of this line looks like going forward.
For sure. And look, we joke about playing Idaho, but this is where this comes into play, right? You have a few games where you can afford this type of situation, and you get guys, you're able to get them reps and really see where you're at. And if it's a panic mode situation, to where it's not going to cost you anything. So I wouldn't obviously sound the alarm just yet. There's going to be a lot to watch come Idaho, even though it's, we joke it's going to be a fun game to break down and to go over. And I still believe we're not going to get much. I mean, Dan's not going to give you the full playbook. And speaking of that, in his interviews, this guy, tough. And most coaches are. And I'm thinking about it because I covered Florida. They level Billy. Billy gets asked the same question 4 different times, 7 different ways, if that makes sense. And eventually you get asked it multiple times. You can only answer it so many ways before you leak out a little bit of information. I feel like information leaks out of there like diarrhea. It's kind of weird. And I think a lot of it has to do with because I think just the beat writers and the organization around Dan and the Ducks really respect and appreciate what he's doing and aren't too concerned to press anything. And the way that he carries himself, the way that he answers the question, he doesn't make it to where you want to ask another question as well too. And look, what does that have to do with anything? It's just interesting, again, following multiple programs and watching how coaches manage their things and watching how beat writers manage their situations. It's all kind of fun to unfold. Because I'll text Eric, like, hey, what's going on? What are we talking about? What do we got from Scrimmage? And he's like, we ain't got shit, dude. They got the thing locked like Fort Knox over there. I'm like, what do you mean, bro? I got former players giving us full breakdowns of the game. What do you mean you can't tell me what's going on? So it's interesting to see how the team out west handles their business and how Dan handles his business. To be fair, you don't get much from Georgia, so he learned from the best, I guess, on how to keep shit locked and how to manage. Georgia has 14 arrests a day, and it gets brushed underneath the rug in like 5 minutes. It's just wild, dude. You can't teach that stuff. You can't teach it.
Well, between Saban and Kirby, those guys are kings of not giving any type of useful information to the media. And, like Kirby, I would say actually both of them, I feel like they bring an intimidating presence to the media where, like you said, they don't even want to press for the information. And I feel like Dan's kind of the same way, where like just the demeanor he answers the questions, you're like, all right, I think we'll stay away from that topic for a while. But one thing that really interests me so much about how tight-lipped Dan Lanning is about everything and the interviews and such like that is that we also get the flip side of it, where we do get access to videos like the team out west every week, and last year we were getting like the post game videos shot by the same media team and such. So like, you know, at the same time, we've had more access to insider information, insider views, you know, kind of what goes on in the locker room, the coaching staff, even in their personal lives, that type of stuff. We've had more access to that over the last 2 years than probably my entire lifetime as an Oregon fan. You know, so at the very same instance, he does a very good job at, you know, getting people hyped up and allowing them to see,
Sure.
you know, some of the stuff he wants to see, but, you know, the relevant information where, you know, maybe it could cause a stir, cause one of these journalists to go out and write an article based off some, you know, nonsense like we see all the time. But Dan doesn't allow that to happen to the media. He's so
Well, yeah, it's
very
that rat
short and
poisoning, right?
calculated.
He controls
Yeah,
what comes out of those videos on that YouTube channel. Trust me. He's
100%.
not that he's watching it, but he's got people that he trusts cold-heartedly to overlook that. That hits if a reporter hits that, and this isn't a shot towards reporter, you know, since we, I guess, are a media company, we fall into that category. We run with stuff more than other things. So I get it. You want to keep that, which Saban calls that rat poison, right? That noise, kind of a hush hush. So I love it. Again, I enjoy watching it and I enjoy being able to talk about it. I love poking fun with you and kind of, you know, riling you up a little bit. I saw one of the Duck fans on Twitter go, do you like the Ducks? Because it's fun to get jive back. It's still college football at the end of the day. Like, we're gonna talk shit, boys. You know, that's what we're gonna do here.
Oh
But
yeah.
I think it's good to have a different perspective and to kind of peel back the Duck blinders every now and then and see like, hey, this is how maybe someone else is viewing it. Is there a reason to be not necessarily even concerned, just a different way of looking at it. Hope you guys enjoyed today's show. I know that I did filming it. I know Derek Duck's fired up as usual. Can we announce that we're gonna maybe having a special guest on, or do we want to keep that hush hush?
We'll keep it on the down low for a while till we get the deets all figured out. But you know,
All right, Dan.
we got something in the works.
All right, Dan. Gee, it runs in the Duck blood, I guess. I love it. Keeping it right and tight, boys. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe. Again, we just surpassed 1,000 subs. Let's keep this train rolling headed into the season. Of course, check out our sponsors. Link is in the description. Bet US, boys. We'll see you in the next one. Peace and love, baby.
This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.